Hello, everybody. And today I'm very excited because we are going to talk about one of my favorite things to teach about, which is the brain and learning. There's so many interesting aspects to it and so many things that if we understood how our brains worked, we might be able to harness some of that brain power and use it for good and use it for more than just watching 90 Day Fiance and knowing like what they're like oh they came I don't know I don't really know if you learned much from that, but I'm sure you can. So multimodal learning, personalizing what you learn so that it sticks in your brain. All right, and this first image that I have is there are many images on equality and equity, and this is one that I had a friend draw for me, especially working in the area of disability and having a disability myself. This issue kind of sticks out to me, especially when we think about the brain. The first picture here is equality, that things are, when people have the same access, it doesn't work for everybody. For this person who uses a wheelchair, trying to pick an apple is very different than the person who is a little bit shorter, and then the tall person who's able to pluck the apple from the tree, but the others are not. But by creating a ramp, everybody can get their needs met. And that is where I believe that certain teaching techniques are more like that ramp, that you can have ramps in the classroom that help everybody. That if a teacher teaches in a visual or an auditory and a kinesthetic way, that you're able to get to more learners, and that they are able to reach more students. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. And I do a lot of trainings on this because I hope that our college classrooms can be places that everybody can learn, no matter how they perceive, whether they're blind or whether they're deaf or whether they have a background in a certain area or whether they don't, that there are enough ways that we will be able to teach as teachers to bring everybody in and not leave anybody out, because I feel education has left a lot of people out, and luckily community colleges have been very thoughtful about bringing people back in. So our objectives here is to learn a little bit more about multimodal learning and how that works. What are multiple intelligences and implementation and application? What is multimodal learning? Now I'm going to have you play along with me. We're going to do a kinesthetic activity, meaning movement. I'm going to go through the different parts of the brain. Now, everybody, your brain. This is about as big as your brain is, okay? And it comes in two parts, all right? There is the left side and the right side. And we're going to talk about some differences there. There's also a bridge that's called the corpus callosum that allows your left and your right brain to talk to each other. Okay, and we're going to come back to the idea of left and right in a later video, but you got your brain. Now we're going to talk about the outside of the brain, which is separated into 4 lobes. So this is very broadly speaking. This is also simplifying something that is incredibly hard, but we are simplifying it so that we can use this information to learn and engage in our education in a more efficient way that goes along with our brains instead of against them. And that for me is a big thing, going with your brain instead of against it. So here we go. Okay, so next, I want you to take your hand and put it on the back of your head, like you're gonna do a crunch. Oh, I haven't done those in a long time. I can feel that. So this is your occipital lobe. Your occipital lobe, if you OCI is the beginning of that. Occipital lobe stands for your eye. okay? And this is the part of your brain where information comes in through your eyes and goes burp, 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 right there in the back, where it processes what you see. So if you're looking at the screen, you are processing what's on the screen. There's a blue background, there's a pink part, there's a yellow part, there's a blue part, there's a green part. It is helping you to perceive and telling you what that means. Okay, so putting all those pieces together there. That is what the occipital lobe does, is it processes visual information. Next, take your hands and put them on either side or both sides of your ears or your temples. When I say temples, that gives you a hint. This is the temporal lobe, and it's right near your ear. So this is it helps to process things that you hear. So the left side, boop, this is the language side. So I always think left language because they're both L's. So I associate it like that. The left side is where you process spoken and written language. The right side, though, is often associated with more of the pragmatic parts of speech. Those are the parts of speech that are intonation, that are more hand motions. And it's my favorite example of this is that stuttering is right here on the left side. It is right here, and if you see where my mouse is, it's right next to Broca's area. Broca's area is the expressive part of the brain, and so right next to it is thought that stuttering is located there. From the brain's studies, it shows that. And so when people who stutter talk, then we are going to stutter. But if we sing, there are many people who sing. So there are singers like Mel Tillis and Bill Withers that when they sing, they're totally fluent. But as soon as they start to talk, they're going to stutter. That is because singing is a right side function. So another example that I love for this is the actress Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, I always have to tell young people, she is the lady on the shirt, but before she was the lady on the t-shirts, she was an actress. And if you watch her acting, she did a lot of comedies and she was very good at those. And she would talk like this, because if you talk like this, you can prolong your speech, and it's kind of like a song. And it kind of tricks your brain into speaking from the right side instead of the left side. And there you go. There you go. See, I was totally fluent during all that. I don't think I want to teach like that. Yeah, it's not really who I am. But she made it work for her. And you can see her in interviews where she's trying to talk around certain words and using those kinds of techniques that helped her to be fluent, but also what was the price of that too. So sometimes you have to go with your brain instead of against it, but sometimes innovative things can happen from that exploration as well. So dyslexia, which is something that we are going to talk some more about, that is on the left side because that is the language side. Next, take your hand and put it on top of your head, like maybe you forgot or like you acted impulsively, something like that. That is your frontal lobe, and the frontal lobe is the executive function. So that it's considered the CEO of the brain. So it tells the brain what to do and where to do it and stuff like that. So this is the part where you plan. This is the part where you carry out that plan. And this is the part where you evaluate that plan. So this part of the brain loves structure. And that's why time management is so good. That is such a frontal lobe kind of thing, is to plan stuff out, have a list of priorities, and then being able to go back and to do that evaluation. So all of that really important. This is also the last part of the brain to develop, and it doesn't develop till you're like 25-ish. So many of you are still developing your frontal lobes. So I remember saying more impulsive things when I was 22, and then one day when I was 25, I didn't really do those things anymore. I was like, oh, that's because my frontal lobe just got intact. And so you can kind of put a kibosh on some of those things that you might do, because that's where your brain is right now, by looking at those behaviors and seeing what you need to improve those or to support those. I think there is a way that you exercise your brain to improve it, but then I also think there's a way of going with your brain and giving, having some structure to help you to understand how you think, how you process information, and what's going to work for you, and to work around those things too. Next, take your hands and put them on your head like this. You got to do it. I can see you. I can see you. You better do this. Okay, so it's like this. And now wiggle them around a little bit like this. There you go, kind of like antlers. This is your sensory motor strip right here. And one of those is sensing and one is motor. And so if I opened up your brain and I poked around in there, I could make your left finger move like this, because I do it on that place, because on the sensory motor strip is everything that your body does, where you either feel it or where you process movement. And so I can make this finger move like this. I can make this nose like do something here. That itches. Oh no, that itches too. Okay. So all of that stuff can be done on that part of the brain. So this is the kinesthetic part of the brain. This is the movement part. This is the feeling part as well, or feeling in terms of what you touch, not how you feel about things. And also the yellow part is also the spatial part of your brain. So I'll talk a little bit about that later, but some of you may have done really well in geometry and not so great in algebra. That is because it's a different part of the brain. And the yellow part is space. It is, like I had a friend who would always chip her head on a brand new, like anytime she got into a new car that she didn't know, she would bump her head because she had a difficult time evaluating space and processing that. So she would be off a little bit like that. So those are the different lobes, and the yellow part is called the parietal lobe. So in the classroom, you may have 40% of students being visual, and this is an old study, but this is kind of what I see with the population that I teach at LMC. A lot of people tend to be visual. 15 to 30% seem to be kinesthetic, and about a fourth of the students are auditory. So as you can see, a teacher would want to touch on all of those in order to teach everybody. For you though, you may not have a teacher. If you are visual and kinesthetic, you may have a teacher who just lectures and lectures and lectures and lectures. What you need to do is turn those lectures into visual and kinesthetic activities so that the brain sticks. It is your responsibility to figure out how to make a classroom and a teacher work. In college, there's going to be a lot of variety in teachers, especially as you move on to a 4-year. When I went to UC Berkeley, the people who work there want to do research. They don't want to teach. So they may just blah, 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 and they may just talk about one thing that they really like. Like, it's not their favorite thing is to teach. And I'm over generalizing here, but in the field of psychology, when I went, they were not feeling to teaching. They wanted to do their research. And many college teachers do not have training on how to teach. So they may not make things in a visual way. So you have to adapt to them. They are not going to adapt to you. And by knowing if you learn best in a visual, a kinesthetic, or an auditory way, you will know which way to go toward and what you need to compensate. Also, keep in mind that you may be more auditory in an English class, but you may be more visual in a math class. So there may be certain things that you can get by being auditory in one, but you may lose some of those skills once you move into a different subject, and you may need to use other things. So I really want you to think about this. And next, we are going to think about some tools that will help you. So this is a quote from Confucius that I love. This idea that the things we learn needing to be multimodal, not new. It's been around for a long time. Confucius said this: "What I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. And what I do, I understand." If you can do that, is going to get it into your head more than seeing it and hearing it, doing it. So if you can think about how you can translate into a physical mode the things that you learn, that is going to help you. And it may be an interpretive dance, it may be drawing, it may be a bunch of things, but each of you is unique in that. And talking about unique, this is multiple intelligences. And multiple intelligence, it's a theory from Howard Gardner that I really love, because it isn't if you're smart, but it's how you're smart. Each of us, every single one of us, is smart in a way that is unique to us. Some of us may not have done well in school. I could show you my report card. I was showing it to a friend on Zoom. In the 8th grade, I got a lot of D's, those grades were not a measurement of my intelligence. And grades are not necessarily a measure of intelligence. They may show that you were skilled in particular areas, but it doesn't mean you're smart. And it doesn't mean you're creative, because that creative part, no matter what your field, is really important. And innovation is where I think many of us want to be and want to think about and strive for. So anyway, that was a lot before introducing what the intelligence were. And they have added other intelligences too. So I'll talk a little bit about those. So the intelligence include going clockwise, linguistic. So being skilled in reading and writing and language, learning languages, logical and mathematical. So this can include your traditional math classes, but it might also be logic, like is used in philosophy or in scientific thinking. And this is also where a lot of these start to merge with each other, and you'll kind of see that. Visual spatial are people who do well in the visual mode. So there are some people who are artists, some people who are engineers and drafters, but then there are some of us who process information best in a visual way. For me, I'm not a good artist. Oh my God, no. But I am visual in the way that I process information. And that's why I think I'm doing a lot of videos. I'm doing a lot of videos with all of you because I know this is the way that I learn best and this is the way that I teach best. And also I'm very interpersonal, and that is also where the videos are coming from, is that merging between the visual spatial and interpersonal. And we'll get to the interpersonal in a minute. Then there is musical, and again, it can be both the expression of music and being able to play or sing or dance, but also the appreciation of it. And that is a good thing about college, is just because you can't draw doesn't mean you can't be an art history major, that you can appreciate the way that something's done and not have to be able to do it in order to study it. There are different aspects to a subject that even if you love but you can't do, you can still do it, but perhaps in a different way. There's also interpersonal, which is interacting with people. This may be big groups of people. This may be small groups or one individual. So a lot of times a psychologist may be interpersonal. Teachers are very interpersonal. Entertainers, so people in the dramatic arts are oftentimes interpersonal, and as well as linguistic too. So it kind of starts to merge with those other areas, just like we said. Then intrapersonal, the ability to think about your own experiences and the world, but you do it internally. Some people tend to be like this and some people don't, but it's still important, especially in an online class. This class has a lot of opportunities for that interpersonal. It's that self-reflection. You may see this also in people who are studying certain things like spirituality and religion. You have monks who live in a monastery and they don't talk because they contemplate and they reflect. And that intrapersonal piece, which prayer could also be in that, is something that is important to develop on your own, because self-reflection is important. But also there may be certain jobs or majors that may lend themselves more to that. And psychology, for me, has been part of that, because I'm always like, okay, how does that apply to me? How does that apply to my family? A lot of that stuff. Next is naturalist. These are people who like to be out in the world. They also might interact with nature, and that can include biology, zoology. It can include also different aspects of chemistry. It also is, if you are interested in the EMT program, that is kind of a naturalist thing, because it is out in the world. There are lots of elements. A naturalist isn't someone who wants to be behind a desk. They are the ones who are out. And this may be for their job, but it also might be for their self-care too. And that's where if you're majoring in business and naturalism may not necessarily intersect right now. But it may be that for you, if you love both of those things, that you can find opportunities in nature to study. Like, I just went on a hike and there were like these nice little picnic benches in the middle of the redwoods. And I was like, oh, it'd be so great to like bring my computer there and do some work there. There's no internet, so I couldn't. But anyway, a naturalist can be mixed in with those other things. And finally, bodily and kinesthetic. Kinesthetic being movement. These are people who build, these are people who dance, these are people who do. So a lot of teachers, a lot of people working in electronics and process technology, automotive, where the goal is to do a thing. And part of that may eventually be to create, just like we have talked about in the critical the thinking part, to eventually build a new thing. So they have added some other ones, like, for example, so spirituality has also been added after he developed these. Howard Gardner included that. So looking at this both in terms of what you want to study, but also how you want to study. And also, I just think it's good to know that not everybody is going to be able to excel in math and English, and those are just two ways. You know, when we are in K-12, when we are in elementary school and high school, there's such an emphasis on reading, writing, and math, reading, writing, and math, reading, writing, and math. That's only two of the intelligences. And what happens is, for many of us, our intelligences are not focused in high school, so we may not know that we have these things. But college, when you take general education, it helps you to explore this, because you may come in just like Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther, came into college thinking he wanted to be a doctor. He left college knowing he wanted to make film. And general education helps you to touch on those things so that you can kind of get your feet wet and experiment and see. You have an opportunity to take things that you've never taken before, and it might be your passion and it might be your love. And I encourage you to explore all of your intelligences, just not math and English. Okay, so in the discussion here, I want you to discuss the following. What are some of your favorite things to do when you, sorry, I'm blocking that area. So what are your favorite things to do and to spend time with? What is your major? Second one, what is your major? 3, what do your interests have to do with your major? So are the things that you do on the weekend something that you could actually study if you are out and about? Going to concerts, then why not do event planning? Is there a way to connect that love into something that you do every day? Or do you really want it to be a separate thing? Because sometimes when you have to work it, you don't love it as much. So that's something to consider there too. How can your interests help you with your major? So an interest can either lead to a major and then to a job, or you can integrate that in for your major. So if you, like, I love watching TV. Oh my gosh. I wish I had a TV right here so I could watch it, but I can't. But I integrate TV into whatever I do. So if I'm trying to learn a new thing, I think, like, okay, is there a TV show or a movie that I've seen that relates to this? I also love watching documentaries because I learn a lot from them, and going onto YouTube when I don't know something or when I want some more information, that has helped me so much. So if I am in a psychology class, I might think about films that relate to the different diagnoses that I'm learning about. I might think about the princesses. Here are the Disney princesses. Many people love them, love them, love them, love them. Can you use them in a subject? Can you use them? Like, how do they relate to sociology? So just like we have the marshmallow, anything can relate to anything. And the more unique something is, the more it's going to stick in your brain. And especially if you have background knowledge of it. So if you can break down the Disney princesses into sociological phenomenons and maybe what they express, then that may help you understand a sociological concept a little bit better, and it will help it stick. Okay. I know when I was in grad school, I had to learn the Rorschach test, which is the ink blot test where they show you a card and it's like, what's this thing? And me and my friend, it's my friend who I told you about who would throw up before tests. We would study those cards and what they meant, and there was a system behind it. We both love Disneyland, and so we related every single aspect to that system with Disneyland, just so that we could connect the information. It was something that neither of us had a background on, but we had a lot of background on Disneyland. So we were able to merge those things. Okay, so merging those things so that it sticks in your brain. And like I said before, one of my loves is stand-up comedy. And so I have a picture here of Dave Chappelle, because I would oftentimes learn things in stand-up comedy that then stuck in my mind that I could relate to in psychology. And movies and TV, I have a movie theater here and a TV to represent how how those things have helped me learn. And also there is a head here with a puzzle, which symbolizes that I like to think about ideas, but sometimes I have to be very clear on what I'm looking at in order to have a better understanding of where to go with it. Okay, this is important. So this is Dale's cone of experience, and this is something that teachers see. And what this is how do people learn best? And the pyramid goes from learning the least to the base, which is learning the most. So from the top to the bottom, and in the order of what sticks, reading, it is that you retain only 10% of what you read. You retain 20% of what you hear. You retain 30% of what you see. Confucius, you got us. That's like 50% right there if you do a little bit of everything. 50% of what you hear and see, there you go. And that can include attending exhibits and sites, watching a demonstration. 70% of what they say and write. So doing a presentation, designing collaborative lessons, creating a video, all of those things are ways that may help you learn best. And that's why projects are so important, because when you assemble those projects, it really does make it more hands-on. And finally, 90% of what you do, you got to do it. So a simulation or model of real experience. That is why I love our auto tech class, because you are both in the classroom, but you are out doing it in a way that is authentic to what it would be on the job. You are learning on the job, and learning on the job is so helpful, because you get to see if the ideas play out in the way that you learned them. Also, part of the doing is to design or perform a presentation to do the actual thing. So that may be if you are in child development, you are there working with the kids, like in a lab, and you develop a lesson. So those are the things that you might use to make the information stick. Now, a lot of these are more what a teacher might assign, but if you look at something like study groups, how can that be applied there? If you can think about how to make a model for a study group to teach them, because when you teach, that helps you learn it. And so if you had 3 friends in a class and each of you took chapter 1, 2, and 3 and taught that to each other and did little activities around it and planned it all out, you could touch on these things so that it spirals and you see it, you hear it, you do it, you all of that stuff is going to help you. So we can also put the multiple intelligences into the learning styles. This might be helpful for you to think about this, and it might not, but some of the auditory learning styles can relate to multiple intelligence in terms of linguistics, logical, mathematical, intrapersonal, naturalist, and the visual could be visual spatial, logical, mathematical, intrapersonal, naturalist, and finally tactile kinesthetic could be bodily kinesthetic, visual spatial, musical, and naturalist. Now, as you can see, naturalist is in each of these because in nature you have to use all of your senses, and even if you don't have one of those senses, you can still engage in a way to look at what's going on and to perceive it in a different way, whether it's through smell or feel or feeling. That there's many ways to get to that place of understanding and processing and connecting with what you learn. And that is, let's see, okay. So now this is from it's the following slides are from the book Teaching Kids with Learning Difficulties in the Regular Classroom. Not a great title, but it is what it is. So these slides I'm going to make available online, okay? You write that down, slides online. And then what I'm gonna have you do is go through these and mark down the ones that you feel you can connect with. Now keep in mind that the book that this was written for was made for kids, but a lot of these things apply to all ages. But some of them, kind of like drawing or writing vocabulary words into shaving cream, may not be something that helps you. If it does, and you're taking medical terminology, then that might just be perfect. But some of these are more kid-based, so do keep that in mind. But most of them aren't. Most of them, you know, I think we feel that because we're not kids, we don't learn in those ways, but we still do, and it's still okay to engage like that. So I'm going to read these. If you need to have those read, that is great. I'm going to do that. You may want to listen. Again, we want to do the auditory, we want to do the visual. And so I'm going to read these, but if you want to read them on your own, they will be made available as well. So here we go. Oh, and again, from this, I want you to write down the ones that you think will help you. So the visual learners they may use pictures rather than words, so symbolizing concepts in pictures. And one way to do this is to go to Google Images and use that to give you a picture of a concept that you may have a difficult time with. Viewing rather than reading, so videos and demonstrations. Look for an example of a finished product. So looking at what the end result is, and that's why I will show you it in end result when I have one, because that is going to help you understand what it needs to look like. The visualizing scenes, characters, and actions as they read or learn about them. Some of you might do that. Finding visual cues in text, so really looking at texts in a way that is going to help you become a better reader, not through reading itself, but the visual cues that are in there. Visual learners also learn best through graphic organizers and mapping, illustrations in a chart form, using artistic means to express what they learned, so drawing it out. If you get something wrong, look for an example of what it looks like when it's right. So for many of us, we need to see a visual of that. The visual order in the workplace. So having a clean desk, some of us do better with that. I don't, but that's okay. Some of you might. Drawing or doodling while listening. I encourage you to doodle as you watch these videos. I encourage you to do anything that helps to facilitate you processing what you're learning here. Kinesthetic, express concepts through art or unique study materials. A jigsaw where each of the students brings in a piece and then they teach it to each other, and that teaching piece is the key kinesthetic thing. Receiving a concrete example at the beginning of the learning experience to understand what you're learning and where it's going to go. Kinesthetic learners also learn best by doing. So that can include labs in science. It can include experiences in child development of going to the Child Observation Center. It can be any of the things that you learn in your labs in Auto Tech, P-Tech, E-Tech, Fire, all of that. Integrate tactile models when appropriate. So here is a model of the solar system, but think that you can also create a tactile model for whatever. Like we made a tactile model of the brain. You will always have this with you. You can always do something with this. And the more of that you have, that you can look at, that you can touch and feel, that is going to help the information stick. Directly applying principles learned in class or at an internship. So you may have an internship that you can apply what you learned to child development at the internship, and having that link of real world experience is going to help you, and is also something that students who are at a university may not have. They may not get those experiences, but you have that opportunity at LMC. And if you want to talk more about how to do that, let me know. Incorporate role play and simulation, so acting it out. Kinesthetic learners, use squishy balls. I'm so kinesthetic that I use these. I broke 3 of them last week working on this class because I have to move, I have to fidget in order to open up my other senses. Learning academics after doing physical activities or during. This was done before internet classes were such a thing. But if you do best on a walk and in listening while you're on a walk, you can bring me along on the walk. It doesn't always have to be in a formal classroom all the time, especially when it's online. In the classroom, it may have to be acting out stories and events, and fidgeting or chewing while thinking. Kinesthetic learners also may write in a different medium. This may not work so well, but you know, you can do it in shaving cream or pudding. Word processing instead of handwriting. For some of you, it may be better to bring a laptop and take notes on the laptop because you can think and write faster that way. Learning and creating raps, rhythms, rhymes, and jingles. So your parents probably know this better than you, but there is Schoolhouse Rock, and Schoolhouse Rock was something that those of us who grew up in the 70s, 80s, and a little bit in the 90s know, because they put songs to things that we had to learn in school. I will put a link there. Let me write that down. Link to Conjunction Junction, okay? So you will get that and see what it's like to have a song that can help you memorize. Also, there's one from Pinky and the Brain that I really love because it's parts of the brain. So you will get that too. Auditory learners, they may need a syllabus a little bit early so that they can so that they can prepare. Because, okay, this is the thing. If you use books on disc, so books on the computer that are read out loud, and this is something that we'll talk more about under dyslexia, but if you have that as an accommodation, it's important that you get a syllabus, or that you know what your classes are and what books those classes, what are required in terms of books for those classes, so that you can get those assignments, know what they are, get those converted into text that you can read. So specifically, I'm talking to students who are blind or dyslexic, because you're the ones who need that access to the auditory piece. Also, others of you might benefit from that as well. And when we talk about technology and reading, I'm going to give you some options there. Books in accessible formats. Requests that handouts are posted on the web. So if you can access handouts on the web, you can have those read out loud to you as well. So not all of these, even though disabled students have a right to them for equal access, these are things that can help everybody. So you can find ways to read, to have your PDFs read out loud. Also, having somebody read and describe what's on the board or what's on the slide. And that's why I'm going through these, because some of you might be listening to me while you fold laundry, you need a description of what's on the slide. I'm just not going to say, okay, there it is, that's it. I want you to hear what is on there. And oftentimes those who are more auditory will like this. Those who are visual, who don't want to hear me go on and on and on, they may not. So auditory learners give out handouts. So to help them, or to help yourself, it's good to get the handouts that are inaccessible early on so that they can be put into a more accessible way. So get them to the DSPS office. It's also good to kind of know where you're going in a lecture, kind of what's the main point. So it's good to have something read ahead of time so that if a teacher doesn't really orient you to a topic or to their lecture, it may seem like there isn't any order, but there is. So it's important for you to know where they're going to go. And sometimes when a lecture might not be as, it may not be as organized, you may be able to glean where it's going to go if you do the readings that were due that day. Also, getting verbal support of graphs and pictures. So seeing a graph in statistics may not help you as much as having that graph interpreted by someone else. And that's why study groups can be great, because if you have two brains that can complement each other, maybe one is really good with pictures, but they have a difficult time with something else, but then you come at it from the opposite strength, you can really complement each other well. So that is something to consider there. And also to create some voice files that you can listen to. So you may have a study guide that you have for an astronomy class, and that study guide can be put onto a Word file onto your phone, and then it can be read out loud. So when you go on a walk, you can also listen to your study guide. And study groups can create notes for each other, and then you can put that onto the auditory mode and listen to it. Okay, I think we got everything there. Let's see if there's other stuff I want you to do. Okay, those of you who are applied and analytic need to go that route the entire time. You constantly have to look at what is the point of this, what is the context, where are you going with it? So building on concepts that you learn and finding ways to integrate what you already know into what you're trying to learn. It may also help you to have group work and build on each other's ideas and present information in an original way. And also looking at case studies. So how was, like, in administration of justice, there are so many ways that you can look at a concept there and to type it into YouTube and to know an example of it will help to stick it into your mind, as well as you coming up with a case study and wondering about that, maybe even talking to the teacher about the what ifs. If there is a what if that is going to help you engage, then I think that's really important to have. And that concludes my presentation, my first presentation on the brain and learning. This is a really important piece, and I hope that you spend some time looking at how you learn best. and I appreciate you watching this video.